Okay. So this is now being recorded. Cool. And I'm going to share my screen and we will get started. So you guys can all see my screen, right? I'm going to take the silence as a good sign. Cool. Okay. So I'm relatively new to WebEx and I actually cannot see the chat box. So, Hannah, just keep an eye on that, please. So today we are talking about the Monday Mile and how to create accessible recreation routes and spaces in our community. My name is Mary Kate Scott. I'm the program coordinator for the Learner Center for Public Health Promotion at Syracuse University. Okay, cool. So this is our overview, just a brief game plan, and I tend to deviate anyway, but just to let you guys know, I'll start with some learning outcomes in case this is for any CEUs. I'll do a brief overview of the Learner Center and the Healthy Monday program, and then dive right into the Monday Mile, why inclusive recreation spaces are very important and meaningful for our communities, and then the process of creating a Monday Mile or accessible recreation space. So the learning outcomes for this session are to describe the Monday Mile as a program and how to adopt this program into your unique setting. Identify any sort of partner orgs to collaborate with in creating your Monday Mile. Identify accessible spaces for people to walk, jog, roll, stroll, skip, jump in your community, and list elements to consider when assessing any sort of space for accessibility. The Learner Center is a population and community health research center based in the Maxwell School at Syracuse University. Our mission, broadly speaking, is to improve pop and community health through lots of different research methods, applied research, evaluation, education, training graduate students, engaged service, being out in the community like what we're doing today, and advocating for evidence-based policy and practice change. We focus on the upstream drivers of what affects health. That's more of the Learner Center mission, and Healthy Monday is the signature program of the Learner Center. It complements that mission by looking at the more downstream driving factors like people's behavior, and community environment, which affects their health. So the blend of the two makes us a pretty comprehensive center. So Healthy Monday is actually a national public health initiative to stop the spread of chronic disease by offering a weekly prompt or program that can support people and communities in not only starting a healthy behavior on Monday, but sustaining that behavior throughout the rest of the week. So our intention with the Healthy Monday program is to have people or organizations set a Monday intention, and then with that Monday intention, have that be momentum to carry out that behavior throughout the rest of the week, which would eventually create sustainable and long-term healthy lifestyle changes. These are the Monday programs that Healthy Monday Syracuse at SU focuses on. Of course, today we're talking about Move It Monday and the Monday Mile. Super quickly, I want to address the different tenets of the Healthy Monday program, one of which is preventing that chronic disease. So we know that chronic disease is a really large factor in our healthcare system in the U.S. It's a leading cause of death and disability in this country. This is from last year. I would honestly assume that these numbers have probably inflated a bit since 2019, but 6 in 10 adults have one chronic disease, and 40% of adults have at least 2, and it's costing us a lot of money in healthcare costs. When I first gathered this information and I saw this graphic from the CDC, I looked at all of the different chronic diseases on there and could picture people in my mind of someone I know who has at least one of these chronic diseases. It was shocking to me to have that hit so close to home and realize how prevalent chronic disease really is. But the good news about chronic disease is that it's preventable and it's modifiable. We can manage chronic disease or prevent the onset of chronic disease through our behavior, right? So tobacco, any sort of smoking, vaping now too, it could be an indicator of the development of chronic disease. Poor diet and nutrition, not moving enough, not even just exercise. That's a whole different ballgame. I'm talking about taking the stairs instead of the elevator, just general movement in your day. Lack of movement can lead to chronic disease and excessive alcohol use as well. This is not to dismiss the social determinants of health, the structural factors that affect people's health. That is very much in play here too, but the Healthy Monday program focuses more on the behavioral lifestyle risks. So why is Healthy Monday called Healthy Monday and not Healthy Tuesday? That's a good question. So there's research by Johns Hopkins to support that people view Monday as a fresh start, and the week is a really important unit of time in our Western society. Monday is the start of the traditional work week and school week, so people wake up on that Monday morning viewing Monday as a fresh start, as a turn of a new leaf, and therefore people are more likely to start a healthy behavior or kick an unhealthy behavior on Monday more than any other day of the week. And like I said before, setting that Monday intention gives you momentum to keep that behavior going throughout the rest of the week. So you can imagine yourself like this little cat here, motivated to get stuff done on Monday. These are just some graphics by Hopkins to support what we call the Monday effect. So there's an upsurge in healthy intentions on Monday. People are more likely to start an exercise routine, begin a healthy diet, eat healthier generally, or schedule a doctor's appointment on Monday more than any other day of the week. And Monday helps people sustain those healthy behaviors as well. So the agreed bars, or the tallest bars here on the left-hand side, state if I eat healthy on Monday, it helps me continue to eat healthy for the rest of the week. If I manage my stress well on Monday, it helps to reduce my stress throughout the week. And if I exercise on Monday, I'm more likely to exercise throughout the week. This is essentially how I sum up my job. I'm trying to bring people from the left side of the screen over to hang out with Buddy the Elf on the right side of the screen. I can't see your faces, but I hope that brought you some laughs. So I'm going to keep going with the Monday Mile. It's a sub-program of Movement Monday. Movement Monday obviously focuses on physical activity. The Monday Mile is a nested initiative underneath that. But it's essentially a 1-mile walking route. It encourages physical activity, wellness, and community. The Monday Mile basically identifies a public space for people to come gather, get outdoors, grab a cup of coffee, go for a walk with someone to get their steps in for the day. It's also a way to set fun and approachable fitness goals. So if you're talking about someone who is largely living a sedentary life, or who maybe is struggling with a chronic disease, telling them that they have to start an 8-week rigorous program at a gym is probably not going to be the most effective way to get them moving. That will likely overwhelm them, and they're maybe more likely to give up or not see that through. But telling someone just to move their body for 20 minutes by walking that mile is a way more sustainable and approachable way to dip your toes in the water of that physical activity. And while the Monday Mile can be a physical route, the concept of the Monday Mile and just walking that mile, moving 20 minutes on Monday, can also be very salient as well. And in Central New York, we have over 30 Monday Miles throughout various counties. Here is an event that we had with one of our Monday Miles in Oneida, New York. Which brings me to the locations of the Monday Miles. I'm going to get through all of these. Ooh, excuse me. Okay, I'll stop here. So the cool thing about the Monday Mile program is that it's really, really malleable to your community's needs. So you can create a physical route with those signs and indicators marking, here's the start of the Monday Mile, this is where you turn, all of that good stuff. You can also just have it be a more social campaign without the signage, whatever would work for your community. But the location of the Monday Mile can really be anywhere. So we have Monday Miles located in urban, rural, and suburban settings. Some examples are the Onondaga County Parks, Syracuse City Parks, just around the Syracuse area anyway. This is an example of an urban Monday Mile in downtown Syracuse. We have Monday Miles in Madison County. This is an example of a Monday Mile in Oneida. You can see it's a more rural area. We've also expanded to some Central New York college campuses. And we also have an international Monday Mile route in Nicaragua as well, just a fun fact. But this program is adaptable to meet the needs of your setting, which I find to be really cool and pragmatic, not for nothing. So I'm gonna check our time. Okay. Are there any questions at this point? I'll stop and take a breath. Feeling good?
I have a question about, is it more difficult to get it started in rural areas, or do you find people are like really willing to like come together when they're sparsely populated areas?
Great question. I have found that my partners in Madison County, which is a predominantly rural county, they do a lot of good work as far as programming and promoting the Monday Mile routes that they have. So a lot of their events have pretty good turnout. Um, so I think because rural areas are really interesting because there's not as many people there, but it seems like the social connection between the people that are there is very strong. So if there's a neighbor putting on a Monday Mile event or going for a walk on a Monday Mile, they're really likely to invite their next door neighbor or the neighbor down the street to walk with them, which kind of generates that community feel in a really organic and really authentic way. So to answer your questions as far as getting started, if you can find the right people, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later, like a community leader in that area or any sort of nonprofit or even the county health department, if you leverage the right people, I don't think it's too difficult to get started. Especially in rural areas, there's not usually a lot of social infrastructure for people to actually walk. So I have found that it's actually refreshing from the community members' perspective. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
I also tend to I could talk about this for a very long time, so I tend to overshare when there are questions. Um, so talking about inclusive recreation spaces, I'm going to cover the concept of inclusion first. You may be familiar with this, you may not. Regardless, I think it's a good refresher. So inclusion from a broad standpoint means that you have the necessary support so every person in that space can benefit. Inclusion means being accepted, respected, and appreciated for who you are, regardless of your shape, size, creed, color, ability. Inclusion means that you feel like you belong in that space, not only that you can physically access that space, but that socially you feel comfortable there. Inclusion means having the same choices and opportunities as others, no matter your ability, size, shape, like I said. And inclusion means that the facilities are accessible and easy to use by everyone. That's more of the physicality of inclusion here. But it's also important to note that structural and environmental forces, like certain policies and regulations, need to be in place for inclusion to really work. And on a lower level, the staff needs to be trained in what this means as well. Just things to think about. Oh, and there's one more. Inclusion also means being with others who share your interests, not necessarily your ability. Inclusion's super important, especially when you're talking about community spaces and recreation spaces, because we know that recreation, being outdoors, moving, is really good for our health in a variety of ways. So having an inclusive space layered on top of that only breeds more community, more connection, more play, more fun for people to actually engage in that physical activity. From a broad standpoint, inclusion creates strong and authentic communities. It fosters that real meaningful connection, which strengthens the social fabric of your community in general, which can be a really powerful thing. Inclusion promotes diversity. It promotes positive and accepting attitudes. It improves the quality of life for everyone. It can improve life skill development. Imagine if you have school-age children in a truly inclusive space. They are learning from people and other children of different abilities. They're seeing things that they might not see inside their home. So their sense of mankind, you could say, is being broadened at a very young age, which fosters more accepting and open mindsets for when they grow up to be an adult. I can cite some specific examples of that I've witnessed. It's a beautiful thing. If there's time, we can talk about that later, if that's something you're interested in. And inclusion also includes socialization. You have that space, that open, accepting space to foster that true connection. I'm just looking at my notes here. Yeah, good. I also really love this graphic just to highlight the difference between integration and inclusion. So you can tell by the circles here that integration and inclusion are not the same. And I think a lot of organizations check that box of diversity, inclusion, and equity and all of that stuff. But what they're really doing is integration. It's not true. It's not a truly inclusive space. So you can tell here that integration is people who are maybe the outliers of the mainstream, whatever that means in that situation. They're integrated into the space, but they're not infused. They're not actually included in what's going on. This would be an example of a classroom setting with a table of students who may have different needs at their own table in the corner. That's integration. Yeah, the classroom has students of varying abilities in it, which is awesome, but the students of varying abilities are not actually dispersed meaningfully into the entire space. That's what inclusion is. It's having people of varying colors, backgrounds, creeds, all that stuff actually engaging and interacting with one another. That's the social aspect of this. Resources that are wonderful for kind of getting your feet wet in this whole idea, especially for recreation spaces. The SUNY Cortland IRRC is a wonderful resource, fantastic database that can actually show you inclusive spaces in the area. So if you're traveling with someone who has a different ability, might not be able to truly enjoy a space if it's not accessible, you can check the Inclusive Rec website and see what that space offers before you even leave your home, which I find to be absolutely amazing. NICPAD is also a great resource, the Community Health Inclusion Index, and your local parks department and government, some of which I'm sure you guys are members of, they're also a fantastic resource. So just things to keep in mind. So an inclusive Monday Mile is a little bit more meaningful than a regular Monday Mile, I'll say, because having that inclusivity packed into that space, it encourages that physical activity for everyone. It's a catalyst for positive change because we're talking about, it's relatively small, but it's still a social, some sort of social infrastructure within your community. If you have Monday Mile signs around and it says this is an inclusive space for all, that's going to be a catalyst for positive change, no matter how small. And having an inclusive Monday Mile means that the Monday Mile is more than a recreation area. It's a place for people to truly just come together, enjoy the outdoors, and connect with one another. And we know that that has super positive implications for our health, other than that physical activity, getting your heart rate up and all of that good stuff. I'll stop there before we continue. Are there any questions at this point?
I have a quick question. You mentioned the inclusive Monday Mile versus the quote unquote regular. Is there usually a differentiation in these events between the quote unquote regular and inclusive, or is it kind of that you're moving Monday Mile toward always being inclusive if possible?
That's a great question. So I am always, if I'm creating a new route, I am always looking to make it as inclusive as I can. I would say probably 50, if not 60% of our Monday Mile, probably more than that actually, are inclusive. There's a couple in the downtown Syracuse area that are not, just because there's a ton of hills in that area. But I'm always striving to be aware of the area and making that space inclusive. So there is a delineation there. I don't really make it explicit unless I'm talking to a partner and that's something that they want to have on a sign or kind of showcase in that area. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, and I just thought of a follow-up question, if you don't mind.
Sure. Please.
I'm just curious, I live in a rural area, and I'm curious if the inclusive Monday Mile, in your experience, how has creating the inclusive Monday Mile been in more rural areas where maybe they don't have paved walkways and things like that? I'm just curious what your experience has been there.
Yeah, so that's a great point, and I've run into some challenges in creating Monday Miles that are truly inclusive in rural spaces for that very specific reason. I don't know if you guys are familiar or if you live around Cortland, but I was exploring the little town of Georgetown with my colleague. I'm not sure where it is in proximity to Cortland, but it's a very, very, very small town, and there were hardly any sidewalks, and what was there was completely dilapidated and honestly a hazard for an able-bodied person that has 20/20 vision. So we were working with the person as best we could, but we couldn't push to make it inclusive just because it was going to involve too many resources. So if you're finding that the space can't really be inclusive, I would still encourage you to do the best you can with what you have. Even if there's a portion of the route that is paved and then the rest of it is grass or a path, you could still either create half a Monday Mile route and just go there, out and back. You could create that unaccessible Monday Mile route and just note in any sort of language or description about it that this is what the route is like, so come prepared. But yeah, I don't really have a solution because it depends on the resources of the area, and usually in rural towns there's not many resources available, unfortunately. But yeah, it is something that is a challenge for sure.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm going to. Can you see my screen?
We can't right now.
Okay. Let's see. Let's try this again. What's going on?
You're still the host, so you should be able to share.
Yeah, I'm just gonna try this again. I'm sorry, guys.
Fine.
Okay. Let's see. There we go.
Yep, there.
Perfect. Okay. So let's keep on keeping on. So now we're going to talk about creating accessible recreation spaces and what this entails. So the first thing I want you guys to think about is your why. Why did you decide to attend this session? What are the goals that you have for your community? How could a Monday Mile help to meet those goals? Why? What's your driving force behind creating a Monday Mile route, if that's something that you're interested in? Maybe some of your goals would be improving community health outcomes. For example, the reason the Monday Mile initiative was born in Madison County was to reduce the rates of childhood obesity. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another goal could be to promote health equity and inclusive communities. And another goal, no shame, could be to attract visitors to your town and support the local economy. Especially if there's historical landmarks or features in your town, a Monday Mile could be a really good way to showcase those. That's something else to keep in mind. So once you have your why, would you actually like me to give you a couple of minutes to write that down? If you guys are considering creating a Monday Mile, we can take our time and work through this together. I'll give you guys a minute if that's what you feel is right. So after you have your why, I think the next step that makes sense is to collaborate with community partners and kind of start having those conversations with people in your area. So identifying who you could work with. This list is not exhaustive, but here are just some ideas to get you going. So you have your local Parks and Rec department, always a fantastic resource. Universities and schools, there's usually a department or an institute working towards diversity and inclusion in some capacity, so trying to tap the resources of a local university, like the Learner Center, could be a viable idea. You could also work with hospitals. We have many Monday Mile routes around hospitals and surrounding areas to support that the staff is getting their steps in. Like I said, the local government, any sort of youth organizations, if your target is children and adolescents, You can also leverage libraries. Libraries are always, I love libraries. They're have their hand in a lot of different sort of community events and aspects, and they are really important to the social fabric of a community. So libraries are a good resource to leverage as well. Places of worship could also be a viable option, and leveraging community leaders. So those are people in your community who are really passionate about the area, maybe trying to organize events themselves to, I don't know, to pick up trash, to plant flowers in a garden, whatever that could be. But tapping into the community leaders is actually super important because they're the experts in the area, right? They're invested in the community, so they can help identify possible locations for the Monday Mile route. They can give feedback on any potential loops or areas that you have in mind. They can help promote the Monday Mile to other community members, help maintain the trails, and just generally be an active and happy participant in the program. So whatever people or partners you're trying to leverage, I would really strongly encourage you to contact them in the planning phases, especially if you're going the inclusive route as well. I would also look for organizations who are doing that sort of work, or even talking to like the SUNY Portland IRRC. If you are, whoever you're getting involved with the planning of a Monday Mile, contact them in the planning phases first, because if you're halfway done with your planning and your game plan for this, and then you find out that the route's not truly accessible, or that it can't work in this area for some sort of like land property reasons, then you have to start over. So contacting your partners in the planning phases so they can help you from the get-go is super, super important. And not for nothing, that helps to build trust in a partnership. I'm going to go into how to create or how to keep a healthy partnership briefly, and then we'll circle back to the Monday Mile. But I think this is really important to note when you are creating a space in your community for everyone to enjoy. So if you're going to collaborate with someone else, we know that trust in any sort of personal or professional relationship is really, really important. If you're working with someone new, keeping your integrity is going to grow that trust with time. And if you have a partnership, then you're not being territorial about your projects or your people or your resources. So I really like this graphic. I think it's a beautiful illustration of how trust can evolve a partnership with time. So at first you have a network where you're just exchanging information, right? A network can quickly turn to a coordinate when you're exchanging information with that person and you're kind of coordinating activities together so they're complementing one another. A cooperate is layering onto that, so you're harmonizing your activities and you're sharing resources. That could be time, money, personnel, incentives, materials, anything like that. And the last step of this, what I think people should aim for, is a collaborative relationship. So layering on all of those aspects beforehand, you're also enhancing the partner's capacity to reach their goals. So if you have a collaborative relationship with someone, both of you guys are winning. You're both ideally you would have a shared goal that you're both striving for, and in achieving that goal, both organizations and all of the members and people served are all going to win. So you can see this blue arrow here, the network to collaborate is evolving with trust over time, and the turf war having that weird sense of like you're being threatened, like your work is being threatened because someone else wants to help or someone else wants to get in the space with you. That would say that's the opposite of a trusting relationship. Feeling like you're being threatened or your work is being threatened is going to undermine that partnership at some point in time. So super quickly, effective partnerships. I love this little GIF. So you're serving both parties, right? You're scratching their back, they're scratching yours. So if you have an effective partnership, the goals of the program or what you're getting out of the event or whatever it is, it's clear, it's concise, everyone's on the same page. There's a mutual understanding of everyone's role in the partnership. Everyone has each other's needs understood, and all voices are being heard. Clear communication. I think this is the most important thing in any sort of relationship. Giving context, being transparent about what it is you're doing and why you're doing it is super important. It's going to keep your partner in the loop and let them know that you have their back because you don't want to leave them out. You want their opinion, you want their say in every step of the project. And recognizing contributions, a little appreciation, a little gratitude, a little celebration, no matter how small the win is, it's super appreciated. It keeps that positive momentum going within a partnership or an organization. And ensuring productivity. So kind of, it's more or less having another accountability buddy, making sure that you're keeping to your tasks, your deadlines, all of that stuff. Partnerships are super valuable. There we go. Because there's strength in numbers, right? Like this little cartoon says. There's strength in the number of people. You're multiplying your resources, multiplying the ideas that you can share, multiplying the effective strategies to complete that goal, all of that good stuff. You're maximizing your resources by getting other people on board. You're improving outreach to stakeholders, not for nothing. If you have a coalition or group of partners who are approaching the town board for a Monday Mile and getting that passed in that town, it's going to seem a lot more legitimate if there's more people backing the idea. You're minimizing duplication and you're minimizing wasted resources, which is also super important. From my experience working in this sort of public health world, I flirt with that world quite a bit. A lot of the organizations, the coalitions, and nonprofits, they're grossly underfunded, which is a shame. But if you're collaborating with other people, your resources aren't being wasted. You're not doing the same thing separately. You're joining forces to get the job done more efficiently. Getting more brains in the room inspires creativity. You're sharing responsibility for addressing these issues. And I keep coming back to this idea of social fabric, but by having all of these different groups of people come together, it's also strengthening the social fabric of that community level for the people who live in your community. And like this last bullet says, it shows commitment to improving the health equity and community members and their health as well. So lots of good reasons to partner up with someone. So with all of that being said, let's review. You have your reason for wanting to create that Monday Mile and inclusive recreation space. You have identified the partners whom you want to work with, and now it's time to actually find a space for this Monday Mile. So you want to identify that 1 mile route first off. And like I kind of touched on before, it doesn't have to be a perfect 1 mile route. It can be 0.75 miles. It could be 1.2 miles. It's as long as it's an identified safe recreation space, it doesn't really matter. Monday Mile just sounds cool. So you want to identify the route, and some questions you can ask yourself is the route familiar to your community? Is it popular where people actually want to use it? Is it safe for people to use? Is the area frequently used, popular, like I said? Does it have any historical or cultural significance? That can actually leverage more excitement or activity than you would think. So that's something else to keep in mind. So when identifying an accessible route, here are some things to keep in mind. You want to look out for sidewalks, like was mentioned before. If the sidewalks are super cracked, if they're dilapidated, anything with wheels is not going to go on that really nicely, and it's going to be a hazard for people who are walking or running as well. The slope, so how steep hills are on that route, something to keep in mind. Traffic patterns, if the traffic's super, super busy, people might not feel comfortable using the Monday Mile. Or if there's not crosswalks available, if there's no stoplights or things like that, it might not be the best choice. You want to make sure that the stability of the surface of the route is also concrete, as in it could literally be concrete, but things like mulch or dirt, not super stable for something with wheels. You also want to think long-term, who's going to maintain the route, so that's something to keep in mind when developing. And you also want to take into account how close the route is to a parking lot, which I'm going to get into right now.
I have a question, if I may.
Please.
So does that ever spark any like change or like initiative to do anything? Say like one of these walks you go on and they're not accessible, like there's something wrong with the sidewalks or they're not up to code. Like, is there ever any follow up with that? Or is it not that that would be your like job? I'm just saying like, you know, somebody might notice something that isn't totally accessible. Could that be then presented and then worked on?
Are you talking about a designated Monday Mile route, or if it's just a random space in a community?
Yeah, like so. Say for if they did like a Monday Mile one, and then some people like it was an inclusive one, and then it was found out that there was all these things that made it like not as inclusive. Would then there be like a proactive way to then fix it now that it's known that that's a problem for people for accessibility issues? Or?
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen it go both ways. So Syracuse Parks Department is really good about having that be a priority for the Monday Miles and their spaces. But I've also seen the whole bureaucracy of any sort of organization where they'll get to it, and then winter comes and then it's kind of forgotten about. So the short answer is absolutely. The longer, more nuanced answer is truly depends on the resources of the community. But it's definitely something that could be worked out. Yeah.
If I could make an additional comment, just I know that some communities, like the one that I live in, the owner of the home is the person who's responsible for fixing the sidewalk, which can create, well, I mean, that's a burden maybe on the homeowner that lives that urban. What you're looking at is I know some cities do put that responsibility on the homeowners. Just another thought, Weston.
That's interesting. That's something to keep in mind for sure. So that might, if that's the case, if you're thinking long term or if you're planning a route that does include someone's sidewalk and you can see that maybe not this season or next, but in a couple of years it's going to need some attention, might be worth talking to that person about it before you even create the route, or might be worth looking elsewhere if you don't want to bother. So the parking lot is another aspect to keep in mind when you're talking about an accessible recreation space or Monday Mile. So you want to make sure that the parking lot is clearly marked with an accessible space. There's very specific regulations that go into what makes something truly accessible, which you can find on the SUNY Cortland's website. But the width of an accessible parking spot is 96 inches. And the aisle that's usually marked off next to the accessible spot also has to be 96 inches in New York State. That's just so the person, depending on the facilities or I can't think of the word, but it's for a person who might have a wheelchair to kind of get situated in that space next to their vehicle. And it's also really important to keep in mind the path from the parking lot to the recreation area itself. If that's a dinky little mulched path, that's not going to be very favorable for someone who has wheels. Okay, so accessible facilities. Another component of what makes an entire recreation space accessible. This might not be relevant to all of you, but just good information to have. So if you find that a space has any sort of bathroom or facility, just kind of checking out the space and seeing what you're working with, ensuring that the distance between the doors is enough for the doors to swing open and shut and a person with a wheelchair could still get through. You want to make sure that the force of the door isn't too heavy for someone who might be weaker to open. Keeping in mind the registration, this is kind of gold standard, but keeping in mind the counter height of the registration desk, the height of the elevator panels, the height of any sort of bathroom facility like toilet, sink, soap dispenser, hand dryer. The width of the bathroom stall has to be, there's usually an accessible space in bathrooms for this reason, but the width of the bathroom stall has to be, I'm forgetting the number. It's not 96, but it's something close to that. So just other things to keep in mind. And for the social aspects, making sure that the staff is friendly and accommodating to everyone. So let's review. We have our why still. We have our community partners. we've started to explore recreation areas in our community that could comprise a Monday Mile route. And now it's time to determine whether you need signage. Signage is definitely not necessary, and the number of signs you have is totally up to you if you choose to go that way. You could have electronic Monday Miles just housed on your website with a PDF map of the route for people to follow, but there doesn't have to be any signs at that route. It's totally up to you. Like I said, this is pretty malleable to fit your needs. If you do decide to go the signage route, please shoot me an email. I can talk to you about that because we have a vendor with the signs, and we can talk about cost and all that good stuff too. So, like I said before, it depends on what fits your needs. You could revisit an established route and determine where signage could go. So if you have a walking route that's super popular, you could stick some Monday Mile signs on it and see where that gets you. You can determine how many signs you'll need. Like I said, you can go the digital route or the actual tangible signage. Contact the town board, public officials, Department of Public Works to see if they could actually install the signs. I've learned very random things about where you can and cannot put signs in any sort of municipal area. For example, there's only one sign supposed to be on the post of a stop sign, and that's just a stop sign. It's actually illegal to put any other signs on a stop sign post. Fun fact for the day. You want to consider signage pollution. That was something that we had to kind of negotiate with one area. So instead of having signs, we compromised by having paint with arrows on the sidewalk, so there wasn't as many things to distract drivers in that area. The signs do cost, it's about $50 a sign, depending on who the university's contracting with at the time, which unfortunately is out of my control. It also depends on the size and the detail of the sign, but that's definitely a flexible number depending on your needs. Like I said before, you want to take into account who's going to maintain or be responsible for the signs. And the placement and design actually does matter. If you have an arrow on the sign with, like you can see here, these are some of our Monday Mile signs that we've used in the past. I'm honestly not a huge fan of them. These were created before I was hired. I just think they're really busy. I think the map should be the main focal point, and while it's important to have partner logos to recognize that, I think there are just other ways to do it. But I do think the design of the sign can be overwhelming very quickly, so that's just something else to keep in mind, which I can work with you on if that's something you're interested in. And then you want to spread the word. So just a couple tips and tricks that I picked up. Like I said, this list is definitely not exhaustive. So organic kind of grassroots way to get the Monday Mile visible in your area. Schedule walking meetings within your organization just to get people recognizing the sign, knowing that it's there. Word of mouth is actually a really powerful thing. I would not underestimate that. In your community, you can start a walking club that meets at the Monday Mile every Monday at noon or whatever it would be. You can use social media, hashtag the Monday Mile campaign, and see how that can spread digitally. You can make it a weekly tradition among your community, among your family, friends, workplace, all that good stuff. Having a corporate sponsorship, so you could have a corporate sponsor in your area fund, like the signage of the Monday Mile, for example, and then their logo would stay on that sign that just promotes supporting local business, your local economy. Leading by example also never hurts. I think there's power in that as well. These are some examples of Monday Mile events that we've had in the past, which I'm actually going to touch on right now. So as far as community events, just to get the ideas running in your area, you could have that social media challenge, have a picture, someone hashtag Monday Mile, and then have them challenge someone else in their community, kind of similar to the Ice Bucket Challenge. You could create a 30-day challenge within your area as kind of a container. How many miles can you walk within 30 days? And something fun like that, just to generate some activity around it. You can have a fun run or a relay on that Monday Mile route. Walk with a Doc is actually a national walking initiative. I think it's based in Ohio, but basically a local physician gives a brief talk on their specialty. So the community members are getting information on how to prevent that chronic disease, and then the physician actually leads the Monday Mile Walk. It's a really good way to link people to a local provider, have them get free health information, and get everyone outside and moving, even when it's very cold out. That picture, I could not feel my feet, but it was still very fun. And then you can do themed Monday miles. I also don't have on here, there's something I came up with called a chalk and walk. So if it's a nice day, you could have teams pre-register for this, where each team gets a certain section of the sidewalk. They have a theme so it could be like St. Patrick's Day if you're doing it in March. Each team creates a St. Patrick's Day themed scene on their area of the sidewalk, and then everyone votes to see which one's their favorite one. The winner gets a small prize. Everyone's walking the Monday Mile Route, checking out the different scenes, and you get some laughs. So there's a ton of different directions you can take this. And I actually teamed up with student organizations at Syracuse University to help promote their organization's cause. So we did Monday Miles for Earth Day, Sexual Assault Awareness, and Recovery Awareness Month too. So evaluation is the last piece. For accessibility, you want to make sure that you're revisiting that route each season or having someone check on it, whoever's maintaining it and is responsible for it. You want to make sure that it is accessible, especially you don't want to be caught in a situation where you're saying the route's accessible and then the people get there and it's not. So ensuring that what you're actually promoting is true by updating that Inclusive Recreation Resource Center's database, SUNY Cortland. Stay up to date on the latest accommodations, and ask questions. Reach out to me or to others if you are doubtful about something. I also forgot to mention that SUNY Cortland has an inclusive, Hannah, you actually might know this, it's the inclusive, some sort of inclusive certificate. I did it years ago. I'm forgetting the title of it. But it's a training that you go through, self-study, and you're a certified inclusive recreation assessor. So I have all of the numbers.
Could I interrupt, Mary Kay? I'm Lynn Anderson. I'm the director of the Inclusive Rec Center.
Oh, yeah, please.
And so there was a session yesterday. I did that overview, Inclusion U Online.
Yes.
And you become a certified inclusivity assessor.
Yes. Thank you. The words weren't coming to me, but I did it a couple years ago. It's a phenomenal training. It completely expanded my idea and perception of what makes a community space. So would highly recommend it. And one other thing to touch on as far as evaluation, in the public health world, a program's not, it's strong language. The evaluation of a program and having it be evidence-based is very important. And that's not to be dismissed. Evaluating the Monday Mile program is difficult because you can't really measure someone's biomarkers if their blood pressure or cholesterol has declined, or if they've lost weight, or whatever other actual physical health markers would indicate increased physical activity. And depending on your resources, you're likely not going to have someone standing on the Monday Mile start sign all day, every day, counting the number of people who have walked. So it can be tricky. Some things that we found that is helpful to get preliminary data on the routes. If you're having an event, having people register, at least you have a number of how many people were there at that time. Gives you some descriptive information. You can have surveys available, just sending them out to community members or to organizations, checking in, how often do you use the route, are you likely to recommend it to a friend, things like that. And something that we've been piloting with the Madison County Rural Health Council is the use of QR codes. So I have some pictures. It's the smaller green sign below the Monday Mile sign. This was working for a while. There's definitely some holes in it such that you have to promote the QR code signs, ensuring that people are actually using them. I'm assuming not everyone who's walking has their cell phone, knows what a QR code is able to scan it correctly, all of that good stuff. So there's definitely some holes in that, but we have gotten some good information on at least what routes are more popular than others. So it's another route that you could go. And that's all I have for you. So here's my contact information. I encourage you to please reach out if you have questions or if you're interested in creating a Monday Mile route in your community. And you can also find more information on the Learner Center website. So with that, I'm going to, okay, you can all see me now. Do you guys have questions with the remaining time that we have?
If you are muted, you can also type in any questions that you have.
So someone did mention in the chat box, always curious about how to expand programming in areas that do not have it, especially with virtual schooling being the new norm. New ideas are always wanted. Yeah, absolutely. This could be a viable option, especially if children are cooped up inside. You can have a Monday Mile route for them to go run, follow the arrows, and be kids for a minute.
It's an easily socially distanced activity too, which is immediately what I thought about, just because we're limited in what programming we can offer. And being someone who has little kids, I'm like, I totally agree with that. Like anything that can get kids together, but not together, is rare. It's hard to find right now. So it's a cool option for kids.
Yeah.
At least for the time being.
Absolutely. Even for
Yeah.
too. I mean, you can get outside and social distance. I'm sorry, Weston, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. Yeah. I was just gonna say it might be interesting for like the aging population to give them like if they live in like independent living facilities or even if they don't, but like just places like I know that where I work, they like to walk around this loop as much as they can within like their little community. So it might be some fun thing for them to do.
Yeah, I've actually found that the Monday Mile is great for older adults. There is a Monday Mile in Madison County that loops into the property of an assisted living home. And from the last time I checked in on that route, it was doing very well. I also forgot to mention the Monday Mile program can be modified depending on your target population's needs. So, for example, with Madison County Rural Health Council, we were developing modified Monday Miles because my colleague was working with a population that was having trouble just being able to stand up for a few minutes. So we're really working with varying abilities there. So we worked, the goal of the program was to complete the Monday Mile, but we started with a quarter mile. And then we moved to a half. We called it the modified Monday Mile. So we still have the alliteration too. But that's another way that you could go. This program, I encourage you to digest everything that I spoke on today and then truly see how it fits your needs because it's a super adaptable program.
Yeah, I feel like there are a lot of communities that have infrastructure in
No. Esther, are you with us?
Oh, you lost me for a second? No wonder nobody responded. I was just saying that in a lot of communities, I feel like there's already infrastructure in place. There are greenways, there are rails to trails, things like that, but there's no programming built around those kinds of trails. And it could be, I mean, I know in some communities it'd be really challenging, but I feel like some communities it would just be a matter of signage and meetups, you know. So I feel like it could be quite easy in a lot of communities.
Yeah. Depending on the resources. And of course, I find that the towns that could use it the most, social infrastructure is not there. Like you were saying earlier, the sidewalk is not there. It's definitely a challenge because I can only offer the programs. I can help out with the cost of the signage, but I can't convince the local government to build sidewalks.
Yeah.
I can try, but. Is there anything else on anyone's mind you'd like to share? Okay, well, I'm going to throw my email in the chat box too, just so you guys have it again. And it should be available through the conference's materials, but just in case you guys don't have it. Please feel free to reach out if you guys have any follow-up questions, concerns, or thoughts. Happy to chat and help out where I can.
Thank you, Mary Kate.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. You guys have a good, I gave you back 2 minutes. And have a good rest of your day.
Could just encourage you all to, if you're going to be attending, if you're going to be attending our keynote, I would encourage you all to actually stay in this room. We're going to be broadcasting the keynote in all 4 rooms, and we're trying to prevent traffic from all going to one room because technology teams tends to struggle when we have several hundred people trying to go into one room. So we're going to be broadcasting it in all 4 rooms. So if you just want to stay here and just kind of mute yourself or whatever, then the keynote will just be broadcasted right into this room. Although wait, it'll be broadcasted right into this room. So just an idea.